The tragic killing of 3 people on Thursday in the Braamfontein precinct has sent shockwaves. An 18-year-old University of Johannesburg student was among the dead. To help us understand how to cope in the wake of grief, we speak to Ruth Mtabine, founder of the Lighthouse Christian Guesthouse Retreat. Ruth, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, you founded the Lighthouse Christian Guesthouse Retreat based on your own grief. Can you just briefly take us through your journey and the objectives of the Lighthouse?
Thank you much for having me and good evening to the listeners. My journey began when in 2017 I lost my son. He was 16 years old. And it was a very painful journey, but I knew that I didn't want my story to end up like that. Hence, we started the Lighthouse Christian Guest Retreat to make sure that we also talk to people who are grieving. We started a program called Grieving Gracefully to say it is possible that while you're going through your grief, you need to be aware of what you are going through, but also understand how you should cope and survive the stages of grief. Hence, we started the Lighthouse Christian Guest Retreat.
Ruth, I can't imagine what it's like losing a 16-year-old child. I mean, quite often as parents, we expect our children to outlive us. You never expect to bury your own child. So where does one start, especially as a parent, in grieving a child?
And just to share my journey, it's a very, very painful experience, like you wouldn't wish it on anyone. You know, sometimes when it's elderly parents, you feel like, it's okay, they've lived and they've run a good race. But when it's a child, you're expecting a lot from them. You're looking into the future, but also you're grieving for what could have become, you know. And I think for parents is to also, for them to cope, is to acknowledge, to say, this is what has happened. But also you need to deal with the trauma, you need to deal with the pain, acknowledge that this is what's currently happening, unlike when you keep on telling yourself that it didn't happen. It prolongs the grieving process, but it also prolongs the pain where you're not accepting and understanding that this whole tragedy or whatever happened, the loss that you've experienced or it's happening. So I think for me, it's first to acknowledge that you're really in a situation, and then it's easier to figure out how to get out of it.
And how often are family dynamics affected, especially in the loss of a child, in terms of a marriage or in terms of a parent having to have hope and faith and purpose for other children that are still alive in the household?
I think losing a child is very complicated. In a marriage setup or in a family setup, when you go through the phase where you blaming, you're suffering and struggling from guilt, to say maybe there's something that I should have done as a parent to protect my child. Whether they were sick or something happened, it was tragedy, or something like it was a sudden death, you go through that phase where you feel like I could have done something. But also I think what's important is that as a family, you need to grieve together. I've noted in most cases where one parent is ahead or a partner, a spouse is ahead, they're doing well and the others are left behind. But also the struggle is also to embrace the surviving children, other children that you are raising as a parent, to say, how can I raise them? What I know as well is, as a parent, you build a defense mechanism. It's just automatic that you feel like you cannot love on the children because you are trying to guard your heart from suffering the same disappointment or the loss that you've gone through. So it's very difficult to create a balance, but also it is expected that as parents, we need to embrace our children, but ensure that we all grieve together. If we see a therapist, we do it together instead of one person getting better and the others are left behind.
I mean, you spoke earlier on of acknowledging being the first step in acknowledging that you have lost this child. How do you then begin to honor the memory of the child that you've lost?
I think one is you need to tell yourself, you need to work on yourself to say, I have a choice whether I want to remain in this situation or allow this situation to swallow me, or I allow myself to drown into this situation. And I think that talks to healing, because if the person, the person that you've lost, if they were here, would they want to see you the way you are? So to remember them in a best possible way or positive way is to build beautiful memories, but also appreciate each and every memory that you've had with them. Obviously, that takes time. You know, some are quicker to get to that point, but it's a very, very slow process. Hence, it's important to own this grieving process and move at your own pace. When people tell you to move on, I always say it's not moving on, it's called moving forward. You need to move forward because the longer you stay, the more you get yourself depressed.
And of course, I mean, you speak, Ruth, of grieving together as a family, but surely there's some kind of support that can come from an external community of where this child has lived or with this family exists that can give some support in terms of that grieving process.
That's very correct. That's very correct. In some communities, one needs to partake or take part in your church activities. And in some places, the church provides counseling, but also be part of the community. Don't sit in a corner all by yourself because then you delay the process. But also, you need to surround yourself with people who understand or people who are equipped to understand the grief or the situation that you are currently going through. So you can't be around people who they don't mind, they urge you to get over it and say, you should be better by now. So you need to be around people who are very patient, people who understand where you are at, but also in your community, you need to take part and sometimes you need to pursue your hobbies, be part of the community because that's where we need to build support. And programs like that we're running, like Grieving Gracefully, where you need to take part and say, I want to be part of the support group or the community that will help me heal or navigate through my grieving journey.
Well, certainly. You've turned your pain into purpose. What practical tips would you have for someone who's currently watching and doesn't know where to begin in terms of grieving for a loved one?
Like I said initially, that you need to acknowledge your pain, but also you need to take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself is understanding where you are at in the cycle of grief. And we all know that you go through shock, you deny, sometimes it's denial, it's not in any order, but you need to understand where you are at in the grieving process. Like I said, if you stay longer in the depression phase or level, then you need to know that you need to seek professional help. You need to talk to someone. You need to take care of yourself. Instead of numbing the pain using alcohol and drugs, you need to get to start a healthy lifestyle. You need to take care of, you need to eat well, have hobbies, follow your interest. If you're interested in something, you need to pursue that, like hiking or talking to other people and all a lot of that. So otherwise, if you sit in a corner, then you are getting yourself depressed. So if someone is going through a grief, you need help, you need professional help. Stay around people who are like-minded, but also build a community that really understands what you are going through. And the other thing is dig into your spirituality. If you are a spiritual person, cling to that, hold on to that, because this is a moment where you need it more than ever.
Most certainly, Ruth. Thank you so much for your time. Condolences once again on the loss of your son, but we certainly applaud you for the purpose that you've put into that pain and the work that you do to assist others. That was Ruth Mtabine, founder of the Lighthouse Christian Guesthouse Retreat, and she was speaking to us there about grieving the loss of a child.